My name is Maya and this is Shining Bull Vedic Astrology. Today I'm going to speak with you about a lengthy analysis that I carried out on the chart of Vitalik Buterin, the creator of Ethereum. And I'm doing this because I need to share that I feel after analyzing his chart very confident about Ethereum, about ETH, and I feel confident that Vitalik is a special soul carrying out an important dharma for human civilization. So, firstly, we know that his place of birth was Kolomna, Russia. And we know that his date of birth was January 31st, 1994. And I was able to rectify his time of birth. And the time of birth that I arrived at was 2:53 and 33 seconds in the afternoon on that date. My rectification at that time puts Vitalik's moon in the Aries pada of Hasta Nakshatra. A nakshatra is a constellation, by the way. It's a smaller part of a sign, a zodiac sign, and it puts his lagna or ascendant in the Mercury ruled pada of Punarvasu nakshatra, and it puts his Aruda lagna in Libra. So the first thing that I need to say is that looking at his chart, I can see that it is in fact Vitalik's dharma to create and propagate Ethereum. So that's the dharma that his soul has on this planet. And the other thing that I would like to tell you is that also looking at his chart, I'm able to see that he will be successful at carrying out his dharma. So first of all, when we look at regarding his dharma, when we look at his first house, his fifth house, and his ninth house, which are the dharmic houses, we see that at the degree point in each of those houses, which is the same degree point that was rising on the horizon when Vitalik was born, which is his lagna, his ascendant degree point. Okay, at that point, the constellations that fall at that point in each of these dharmic houses are ruled by the planet Jupiter. Okay, so the first thing that we know is that the planet Jupiter rules his dharma, basically. Okay, at the cuspal degree level in the chart. The next thing is that so in Vedic astrology, we look at the moon at the time of birth, and then we are able to see the series of cycles, of planetary cycles that will play out throughout the person's life. And these planetary cycles show which planets will have the most influence over that person's life at each point in time that they're running. So I can tell you that right now Vitalik is running the Rahu Mahadasha, which means he's running the major period, like a larger period of time, many years, ruled by the shadow planet that we call Rahu. And when Vitalik published his when he published Ethereum's white paper, the original white paper of Ethereum, that was in November of 2013. And in November of 2013, he was running a Rahu Mahadasha. He was then, the sub-periods were Jupiter Antardasha and Jupiter Pratyantardasha. So we already know that Jupiter rules his dharma, right? At the cuspal level. And then what about Rahu? Well, in his natal chart, Rahu is in the 6th house, which is an Artha house, which is a work-related house. And so that's work-related. And then he's like the constellation that Rahu is located in is called Anuradha. And Anuradha is ruled by Saturn. And in Vitalik's natal chart, Saturn is in a very close conjunction with the planet Mercury. And when you look at his chart again, and you look at the Artha or work-related houses, so one of them is 6, one of them is the 6th house, and then the others are the 2nd house and the 10th house. So you look at those houses, you look at that same degree point of his ascendant or his lagna, the degree point that was rising on the horizon when he was born, and you see that all those nakshatras, those 3 constellations that are located at that degree point in those houses 2, 6, and 10 are ruled by Mercury. So we can say that at the cuspal level, Mercury is the ruler of his artha or of his work. Okay, so you can see already a connection here of these 2 themes that were playing out when he wrote that white paper, which is his dharma and his artha, the purpose of his soul on this planet, and the work that he will do and does. And another thing is there's a deeper connection or another connection, which is that Jupiter in Vitalik's natal chart is located in a nakshatra ruled by Rahu called Swati nakshatra. So you can see like there's like already in his natal chart a connection between the work that he does and his purpose on the planet. And his work, so both his work and his dharma are Ethereum. Okay, so you can make that direct connection. And then the other thing is that he is going to be successful at carrying out his dharma because Jupiter, who's on the cuspal level, who rules his dharma, is in his natal chart in the 5th house, which is a house of which is a dharmic house, so which of Libra. Okay, the next point is that when Vitalik speaks publicly, you can probably see that he conveys like a certain detachment from the idea, for example, of having enemies, or even he conveys like a detachment or a non-possessiveness over his own creation, the Ethereum network. And for many people, this doesn't seem normal, maybe, like, because most people don't have this ability to be detached from such aspects of life. But this is actually a very positive thing. When you look at his chart, his placement of Ketu, and in general, if you understand, I won't explain all of this, but you see that this is a person who, in my opinion, in his past lives, he has worked to get to this point. This is a good thing. This is a very healthy thing. And so what you have to understand, for the purpose of, like, as part of the Ethereum community or as an investor, understand that in Vitalik's case, this moksha aspect or this ability It's not this ability to be detached, as well as this theme of friendship. Friendship when maybe most people would not choose choose to create certain friendships. So these two things are actually very important to his chart, and they are playing out in a way that is very good for Ethereum. Okay. Okay. So we know that Rahu is Vitalik's current Mahadasha lord, and he has been the lord of the Mahadasha, like the major period lord in Vitalik's life since the beginning of Ether. And so that's important, right? So that means Rahu is important at this point, very important for Vitalik. The other thing is that in Vitalik's chart, actually Rahu is the most important planet in general. So throughout his life, in general, Rahu is the most important planet because Rahu is what we call the Atma Karaka. Okay. So then in the chart, in his natal chart, Rahu is located, as I said, in the 6th house. Now, the 6th house is also the house of enemies. And Rahu is there. And in Vitalik's chart, the 6th house falls in the sign of Vrishik. And Vrishik is ruled by Mars. And if you look at the moksha houses, moksha is like detachment. One thing it is detachment. So you look at the moksha houses 4, 8, and 12, and you see that Mars rules the constellations at that degree point in those houses, which are the degree point that was rising on the horizon when he was born. So Mars is very important for his moksha. So that's why Rahu in the 6th house of enemies being ruled by on the house level by Mars, who on the cuspal level rules his moksha. That's why he's able to not be he's able to be at peace in this environment of maybe he has enemies, people that other people would call his enemies, but he clearly shows when he speaks a sort of detachment that I noticed that many times people don't seem to understand this about him. So the other thing is that Rahu, the nakshatra I also mentioned before that Rahu is in the natal chart is Anuradha. Now Anuradha is the constellation that has the deity, because in Vedic astrology we have a lot of things associated with each constellation, and one very important factor is the deity, and the deity is Mitra, who's the divine friend. Okay, so one beautiful, fascinating thing that happens in Vitalik's chart is that when there's an enemy, he naturally makes friends with the enemy, and that's exactly Rahu working in his chart. That is his soul. That is the most important, the Atma Karaka, the most important signifier of his soul is doing that. Okay, so it's it's a special thing. So naturally, as an investor, you may find this concerning. You may be thinking, okay, but this guy is making friends out of enemies. That's not necessarily good for me and the value of my currency, the currency that if you hold Ether. Okay, well, it turns out that you can relax, because there's something very it's a very interesting chart. And one cool thing that's happening is that for all of us who are part of this community, is that he has 3 different what we call Viprit Raj yogas happening, which create a situation in which literally he will have enemies, and whenever he has enemies, he will, number one, gain from the enemy. So he will gain, he will experience gain, monetary gain, financial gain, positive gain, positive things from having an enemy. And then the other thing that happens is that he loses the enemy. So the enemy comes, he both gains from the enemy, and the enemy also disappears. Okay? And this is something that will happen all the time. And you can already see, I will explain. So how are these yogas? Yogas are like configurations that exist in the chart in Vedic astrology. So what are these yoga? What are these Viprit Raj yogas? Well, firstly, in Vitalik's chart, his 6th house lord Mars is in his 8th house of unexpected gains, conjunct his 12th house lord of losses, Venus. So Venus, his 12th house lord of losses, is also in the 8th house of unexpected gains, conjunct his 6th house lord Mars of enemies. Okay? And that's what's making this happen. One situation that perfectly illustrates this Viprit Raj yoga in Vitalik's chart is the Dow hack of June 17th, 2018. On this day, 3.6 million ETH was hacked from a venture capital firm called the Dow. And on this day, Vitalik was running the periods Rahu, Saturn, Rahu, Ketu. So Rahu Mahadasha, Saturn Antardasha, Rahu Pratyantardasha, Ketu Sukshmadasha. And so we already know about Rahu being in the 6th house, whose dispositor is Mars, who is in the 8th house, setting off a Viprit Raj yoga. Then we have Saturn, who Saturn is, first of all, conjunct. Saturn and Mercury conjunct are both in the Mars ruled pada or section of the Mars ruled nakshatra called Dhanishta. And so that's another Mars connection. Then again, the other thing is that on that day, Saturn in transit was retrograding through his Vitalik's 7th house of partnerships, and at the same time Jupiter, who is the dispositor of that house, because Vitalik's 7th house is Dhanu, Sagittarius. So Jupiter is the ruler of that sign that Saturn in transit was retrograding through on that date. By the way, and also Saturn is the lord of Vitalik's 8th house of unexpected gains, where these 3 Viprit Raj yogas are taking place. And so anyway, Jupiter at the same time was retrograding through Vitalik's 5th house, Libra, and that is the house where Saturn is exalted. Okay, so now I've covered Rahu, Saturn, then there was Rahu, you already know about, and then the last key thing was Ketu, and because it was Ketu Sukshma Dasha, and Ketu is in Vitalik's 12th house, which is ruled by Venus, which is Taurus, and is ruled by Venus. And so Venus, as I said, is one of the causatives of one of these Viprit Raj yogas. And then another two things is that, firstly, on that day, the moon was traveling into the Gandanta, with like a very intense border between two signs. And so the moon was traveling from Vitalik's second house of money into his third house of courage, which is Leo in Vitalik's chart, which is ruled by the sun. And the sun on that day had just gone into his ascendant, Gemini. Like, it had just entered. So you can see that that day was the day for Vitalik to deal with something like this. So what did he do? As you probably know, if you're watching this, he issued a communication that and he just he proposed forking of the currency, and he solved the whole he you know probably the story, but he basically fixed everything with that proposal of forking his currency. So it kind of erased the theft. So and the other thing is the third house that his moon had just moved into and that the sun rules in his chart is also related to that kind of communication. So as you can see, he even talks, actually, I think he spoke recently about how that was actually a constructive experience. So that's a gain. And then obviously his Ethereum is continuing and growing, and that's a gain. And then the other thing is the Tao has kind of virtually disappeared. So this is virtually disappeared. So this is this is the Viprit Raj yogas basically being set off by the situation and then giving their results. So you see that he goes through the battle, but then he gains, and whoever is the enemy, right, disappears. So now Vitalik is no longer in the Rahu. Vitalik is no longer in the Saturn sub-period of the Rahu major period. Now he is in the Mercury sub-period of the Rahu major period. And I feel very confident that this is going to be a period of slow, steady growth for Ethereum and for the currency and for Vitalik as a creator. And so I already mentioned that Mercury rules on the cuspal level his work, or artha. And then the other thing is that various things. Firstly, why do I say this is going to be a positive time period? One thing is that Rahu and Mercury are friendly to each other. Rahu likes Mercury. Mercury probably likes Rahu. And then the other thing is that so it's like not just it's not just that he's in the Mercury subperiod, it's also that Rahu is now in Mercury's sign in transit. And if you look at when Rahu was in the previous sign in transit, which was Cancer, because Rahu travels backwards, that's the period that when you look at the ETH price chart, you see the huge spikes. And you probably experienced them. So now that was the time when Rahu was in the sign ruled by the moon. And the moon is a very emotional, the moon is tidal. So then if you look at the date in March, on March 24th, I believe, 2019, when Rahu moved from Cancer zodiac into Gemini zodiac, ruled by Mercury, then you see the beginning of this slow, steady climb, which is different from the period of these spikes. And that's how I think this period is going to go. Because Mercury, like, its growth isn't like tides. Its growth is like how a plant grows. And like also in Vitalik's natal chart, Mercury is strong because Mercury is in that close conjunction that I mentioned with Saturn, very close conjunction, and that's happening in a sign that is that is Aquarius, which is Saturn's like base sign. So Mercury being with Saturn in Saturn's base sign is like really good for Mercury. And then Mercury, as you maybe figured out, is his ascendant lord because it's the lord of Gemini. And then also if you look at that price chart, look at where the slow climb began, around when Rahu moved into Gemini. And at that period, at the time, Vitalik was in Rahu, Saturn, Moon, Mercury. So in his chart, Moon is in Virgo in the 4th house, which is ruled by Mercury. So like I feel like that is kind of an indication of the way this whole period will go. Yeah. And then if you look at the beginning of that Mercury subperiod of the Rahu Mahadasha, Mercury was in the 7th house of partnerships. So I feel like this time is going to be a time of work, like of fruitful, steady work that will cause a slow climb based on that work that he's doing. With that being said, on September 20th, 2020, when Rahu transiting leaves Gemini, ruled by Mercury, and enters Taurus, ruled by Venus, that's the time, that's the moment that if there's any like big gain during this Mercury, see, because he'll still, at that point, he will still be in his Mercury subperiod, but Rahu transiting will have entered a Venus ruled sign. So if there's like a big gain, then I think that during the Mercury sub period of the Rahu period, then that gain will be initiated on September 20th, 2020. So like for many reasons. So if for example, me personally, I wouldn't sell my ETH around that time. I would watch and see what's happening on that day and the days around that day. On July 23rd, 2021 until August 11th, 2023, that's the next sub period. So that's when he's no longer in Mercury sub period. Now he's in Rahu, Ketu. Okay. That period is going to be a period. So again, beginning on July 23rd, 2021, that will be a period which to all of us, it may look like a loss. For like, it may look like something like just how that Dow hack looked like a loss, right? So I'm not saying what kind of event will happen. Actually, personally, I think it will have more to do with a choice that he has to make or a situation that he's faced with that looking at it, I think it's not going to be something like what happened. I think it with the Dow hack, I think it will be something like where he has some kind of opportunity that's presenting itself to him that he needs to make an important choice about, and that I think it may be something that's very like challenging and like for like in terms of Ethereum, and then to outsiders, like to people who aren't him, watching this unfold, it may look like something that's going to be a loss, but see, like I said earlier, Ketu, who is the sub-period lord here, right, beginning on June 23rd, 2021, is in the 12th house in his natal chart. The 12th house is ruled by Venus. Venus is in his 8th house of unexpected gains, conjunct his 6th house lord Mars, of enemies. Both of them are the ones who are creating this huge Viprit Raj yoga situation. So it's gonna look like, it might look like one thing to us, but it's gonna end up being good. And then the other thing to just keep in mind is after that, he enters the best period, the period of his Atmakarka Rahu, with the sub-period of his Amatya Karka Venus. And that is going to be a very, like a time that is going to kind of like, it's going to set the path for him to do what he's meant to do, for Ethereum to be what it's meant to be. So like even that Rahu Ketu period, when it finishes, number one, he will come out on top. Number two, the next thing is the best time of all. So the last thing that I would like to say is that see, like right now in the news, when I'm recording this video, there's like a story about him, about Vitalik Buterin proposing using the Bitcoin Cash network, like sort of like creating like a friendship, right, for Ethereum. And then this is kind of getting some like concern, like some people I think are concerned about this. So like I said, this is something that's very special and very good and profitable that exists in his chart. And another thing is, like I told you, how like what I'm talking about is his soul signifying planet, the Atma Karaka Rahu, being in the nakshatra Anuradha, ruled with the deity, the ruling deity called Mitra, who's the divine friend. So there's the story of this, of one story of Mitra, is that he was close friends with Varuna, and both of them were in love with a celestial being. Okay, both of these, you know, like your best friend and you are in love with the same person. So that happened, and then each of their semen fell into a pot. Okay, and from, I believe, from one pot came grew or was created the sage Agastya, and from the other pot was created the sage Vashista. So, and then these two sages are often referred to as Mitra Varuna. So, like, what I'm saying, and that's how astrology works, is like these stories play out. And so this story is playing out, like not literally, obviously, with pots, but like this story is being played out. So even if to us he does things that is like, oh, Bitcoin, now he's saying Bitcoin Cash, and maybe some people, so now I hope that you understand that this is something that is good, and it's very special, and it's because he is a special soul who has worked on this aspect of moksha in his past lives, and he has something very special that he's doing on this planet. So I personally, after spending an entire day analyzing this chart, a whole day, I really would say that we should just support him, and like I can trust his decisions, because now I know what it's about, and it's more than just, it's like working on another level. So I feel positive about Vitalik Buterin as a soul, very positive. I feel positive about Ethereum, and I feel positive about the currency Ether. And that's all for now. I will be working on a Bitcoin analysis, and then I will be also giving more practical astrological guidance. And then, so if you want, you can subscribe and click on that bell, and you can look at my info below if you're interested in a consultation about you. And that's all for now. Okay, wishing you well. Bye for now.